I wanted to title this video The Update That Killed Rocket League, but I figured that was a little bit too clickbaity. As we all know, Rocket League isn't dead, but there are elements to this game that I believe have prohibited its growth. So let's start from the beginning with a simple Discord message from this guy, SaruCat. Well, actually it started with an email from him, but then he messaged me on Discord, probably because I missed his email or I just didn't respond to it. Regardless, in his messages to me, he details his frustrations with a particular update in Rocket League from years ago. And this is the anniversary update 1.35 back in, I believe it was July of 2017. Many of you guys who are watching this video weren't even playing Rocket League at this time, so technically you won't really even remember a big part of what Rocket League was like before this update because it was such a big update. And it has to do with cars. That's right, cars. Now you may have seen Sunless Khan's video called The Problem with Every Rocket League Car, and that's a great video, but it doesn't actually tell you what the problem is and why nobody really cares to use different cars. And it's actually pretty simple. The cars aren't actually different. Let's look at a game like League of Legends, for example. When a hero is released for a game like League, it's so much more than just a new skin or something flashy. Yes, it is that, especially for newer players. You know, maybe they see some like hot character and they decide to use it or whatever. But there's more happening. Each character actually has meaningful differences in the way the game can be played, and the heroes are actually different. And you as a player need to know the ways in which those heroes are different. That's part of the game. Rocket League cars are not different, but they used to be. For the first 2 years after Rocket League's release, every single car was different in some manner. Height, width, hitbox tilt, turning radius when using boost. That's right, every car was actually different. Now because of this, there was quite a lot of confusion and misinformation about cars, and very few ways to actually get the correct data on each car. Now if you dug for a bit on the internet, you could find it, but it wasn't readily available. And what did these things even mean? Okay, this car has a faster turning radius, so is that more valuable than a car that is, say, taller or longer? So Psyonix decided to make a change to car hitboxes and to turning. They went ahead and created 5 unique standardized hitboxes instead of like hundreds of unique hitboxes, and they put all of the previous cars and all future cars within one of each of these 5 hitboxes. So if you're using a car in Rocket League, that car is also the same as many other cars that have the same standardized hitbox. Now there was a fair bit of outrage surrounding this, especially in regards to the Batmobile, as it was changed so drastically. So what they did is they basically took like a lot of the main cars that were being used and they based the hitboxes off of those. So like the Octane didn't change, the Breakout didn't change, but the Batmobile did change. It went from being one of the truly unique cars in the game with an especially different feel for gameplay, and they changed it completely. Now this outrage led to them changing the entire plank preset back to basically matching the old Batmobile, and this was better, especially for cooks here. But again, the Batmobile was still no longer a unique car.
Batmobile has never been exactly the same as it was on LCS Season 2. They tried to make it similar, and it is, but it's not like that, and I suffered a lot from it.
Now there's a ton of data to look at in regards to cars and hitboxes, and a great channel to check out for this is called Rocket Science. He goes into way more depth and he does his own experiments, even looking at like Unreal units and such. Basically, he's way smarter than I could ever be, but that's okay because more than anything, I want to look at the big picture. What has this update from 2017 done to Rocket League as a game? Because I really do think this is the cause of some of Rocket League's major issues as a game right now. Let's go back to that Cooksier clip and play the entire thing.
I think they are not experimenting enough with hitboxes, and I didn't like the standardization of hitboxes because like Batmobile has never been exactly the same as it was on LCS Season 2. They tried to make it similar, and it is, but it's not like that, and I suffered a lot from it, as well as many other cars that got standardized. And I mean, there are not many choices for players, and I think Psyonix should like experiment a little bit, maybe add another hitbox to the standardized one, and I don't know, give us something to work on.
Give us more options, you know. You bring out like super nice cars, but there's no real reason to use them, so make them different, give them a proper use.
You agree, Yukio?
I agree with that.
Basically, this isn't just flip side. I would say that this opinion represents many of the pros. There's been a trend in Rocket League, especially after this update, as more and more cars come out, less and less people are excited about them. And I'm saying that as someone who's obsessively been playing this game and been a part of this community since like early 2016. And I remember when like the Octane ZSR came out or the Breakout Type S, the hype around the Breakout S was so real. And a lot of pros, a lot of players used these cars when they came out. Or even if you go back further to like the original cars like the Dominus and the Takumi and the DeLorean, the Batmobile, cars like the Masamune, people were hyped to use these cars not only because they were really cool looking, they were actually different. Whereas now if you get a new car and you jump in free play, you realize it's just the same car as whatever hitbox it matches. Or what about the first time you grabbed hold of the Merc? Probably when you were like drunk or something, or just on a terrible losing streak, and you actually discovered that this giant tall car, this stupid looking van, it actually had a place in the car meta. You could see why people used it, even though it wasn't for everyone. Now the Merc just has the same hitbox as the Octane. That to me is a travesty. The fact that the Merc has the same hitbox as the Octane is just so crazy. There's literally no reason to use the Merc, and no one uses it. In my opinion, this is one of the main reasons players don't use different cars and why new cars that come out really don't matter. We've already used that new car that's coming out because we've used other cars with that hitbox. My understanding as to why Psyonix did this was because of the confusion surrounding these hitboxes and their differences, and I definitely understand that to some degree. But confusion is actually good in video games. That mystery is what takes the average player from just grabbing, say, the coolest looking car to going, you know what, I need to research this so that I can find the best car for me and for my playstyle. That's the best thing any company, any developer can have, is to have gamers who are going deeper into what the game is and what it's like. Not understanding the game completely is what makes you go watch streamers and YouTubers and read articles on Reddit. When I found myself doing these things, that was when I knew I was hooked on this game. And I'm sure many of you guys can relate to that. This is what has given games like Dota and League so much long-term appeal. There's so many levels to these games, and you can't expect to get all of that information without doing some research. But with Rocket League, it's usually just centered around mechanics and physics, and that's basically it at this point. The cars are relatively meaningless. It's pretty much just feel and like the psychology behind, you know, seeing something different when you're hitting the ball. And that's fine, that's definitely part of it. But imagine if every car that came out was actually different. Imagine if cars came out that were actually designed, like the Dominus, for example, for freestylers. Imagine if a car was a little bit faster, but maybe it had a little bit less power. This is how it should be, in my opinion. Yes, you'd have junk cars that nobody uses, and that's fine, every game has that. But the meta at this point is literally pretty much just the Octane. Even the Batmobile players are switching back to the Octane now that you can't have the decals, like the team decals, on the Batmobile. So even like Fairy Peak is using the Octane again, which is just kind of crazy to me. It's funny, sometimes I'll try to make a thumbnail and I'll want to go use like a different car, so I'll just flip through my replays to see like what my opponents have been using, and I literally can't find a single replay out of like hundreds of replays that isn't just a lobby full of Octanes. So make a car that's like the Octane, but make it a little different. Make it have similar stats, but like make it cooler looking. Just do something to force people to use these cars, to force them to get over just doing what they're used to. I still think one of the biggest problems Psyonix faces today is the division between casual players who really just care more about like items and overall looks of the car, and the tryhards who don't care about that stuff at all. Obviously there's some overlap, but in general, most of the community fits within these two categories. And one of the best ways to bridge that gap would be to make new cars that actually are different and have their own advantages. I love the way Zero Cat explains it. He says that he sees why they do it, and I do as well. There's definitely benefits. It's a lot to expect the developers to have to balance every single car with everything else, and I don't think the answer is to revert everything back to the old system. That probably wouldn't make sense. And a major part of this is making sure that Rocket League isn't pay to win. If some new car is completely overpowered and it costs money, then it would be. But he suggests that they randomly just start adding new cars that actually have unique hitboxes and turning attributes just to see what would happen. And it's interesting that the car that Zero Cat brings up as the car that he misses most is the Masamune. He remembers loving that car. It was fast, it was unique, it really stood out at the time, and it looked really cool as well. And I can relate to this because I also love that car. And I used it probably longer than any other car besides the Octane and the Dominus. I used it for months. But after this update, it turns out the Masamune is really no different than the Aftershock or the DeLorean. The fact that these cars are the same, I don't know, it's just crazy to me. Regardless, I'm curious to hear from you guys. What do you guys think? Was Rocket League better when the cars were completely different? Or maybe do you like the 5 standardized hitboxes? Let me know if there's anything I'm missing in this sort of debate. I'd love to hear from you guys. Just comment below. Much love, guys. Thanks for watching. And also thanks for all the support on my last video. I really put a lot of work into it. It was probably one of my favorites that I've ever made, and you guys seem to really love it, so more stuff like that definitely to come in the future. Hope you guys are good, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.